He wouldn't even acknowledge me. Not a greeting, not eye contact, not a handshake. But by the next morning, his company was fighting to survive a financial collapse no one could explain. And the truth, I didn't sabotage anything. I simply stopped protecting what he never bothered to understand. It started on a Tuesday that felt too polished to be real. The headquarters looked like a monument to success, glass walls, reflective floors, people walking quickly enough to appear important. I had been hired as an external infrastructure analyst. Temporary contract. Quiet role. I specialized in identifying systemic risks before they became public disasters. The kind of job no one notices when you do it well. When I entered the executive conference room, introductions were happening. The leadership team stood in a line, shaking hands, exchanging practiced smiles. Then the founder arrived. Confident stride. Controlled expression. The kind of presence that expects recognition without offering it. He shook hands with everyone around me, one by one. Firm grip. Direct gaze. When he reached me, he paused briefly, glanced at my badge, and said, "You handle technical documentation, right?" Before I could answer, he turned away and continued the introductions. No handshake, no name, no acknowledgement. I wasn't offended, I was clarified. Because dismissal is information. It tells you exactly how visible your work is and how vulnerable their systems are. Over the next 3 weeks, I reviewed network architecture, redundancy protocols, and vendor dependencies. On paper, the company looked unstoppable. Rapid expansion, global reach, impressive revenue streams. But beneath the surface, I saw something else. Layers of temporary fixes stacked on top of outdated systems. Critical safeguards labeled as future upgrades. Warnings postponed because growth looked more urgent than stability. I submitted reports. Detailed, neutral, precise. Each one recommended preventative measures that would cost money now to avoid catastrophic losses later. Each one was acknowledged with polite indifference. During one meeting, I explained that a single infrastructure failure could trigger automated contract suspensions across multiple partners. He leaned back in his chair and said, "Our scale makes us resilient." Scale doesn't create resilience. Preparation does. But confidence often replaces comprehension at the top. Weeks passed. My contract ended. No extension offered. No exit discussion requested. On my final day, I handed over a summary of unresolved vulnerabilities. I placed the document on the conference table and said, "These are preventative measures." He didn't open it. He simply nodded toward the door and said, "We appreciate efficiency." That was the last time I saw him in person. I left the building with no anger. Just a quiet certainty. Some systems fail loudly, others fail silently until everything depends on them. 3 months later, I saw the headline. A cascading infrastructure outage had frozen critical operations across multiple regions. Automated safeguards triggered contract suspensions. Partner confidence dropped instantly. Market reaction followed within hours. Investors called it unexpected. Analysts called it unprecedented. Employees called it chaos. But there was nothing sudden about it. It was the predictable result of risks no one valued enough to resolve. The next morning, my phone rang. His voice sounded different. Not authoritative, not control, careful. He said, "We're reviewing prior consultations." I let the silence exist. He continued, "You identified certain structural concerns." I said yes. Another pause. Then he asked, "Why didn't you insist more strongly?" It was an honest question. But honesty doesn't erase responsibility. I replied calmly, "I documented everything clearly." He said, "We assumed the risks were theoretical. Assumptions are comfortable. Reality rarely is." He asked if I could help stabilize recovery systems. I told him I could review documentation if requested formally. Professional distance. Nothing more. Before ending the call, he said something unexpected. "We misjudged the importance of your role." Not an apology, but closer than anything he had offered before. Recovery took months. Leadership restructuring followed. Public statements emphasized lessons learned. Preventative investment suddenly became a priority. From the outside, it looked like a dramatic collapse. From my perspective, it looked like gravity. Because when protection is invisible, people assume it isn't necessary. Until it's gone. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't need to. Respect doesn't come from forcing recognition. It comes from understanding your value even when others don't. He refused to acknowledge me when everything worked smoothly. But when stability disappeared, suddenly my work had weight. Not because I caused failure, because I had warned against it. Sometimes revenge isn't destruction. Sometimes it's stepping aside and letting consequences arrive unprotected. And sometimes the most powerful moment isn't when someone loses everything. It's when they finally understand what they lost first. Respect.